So I'm going to talk a little bit about eSport. Most of you guys probably heard of it because it's kind of an industry buzzword right now. It's basically putting E in front of sport. Essentially, instead of playing a ball, you're playing a video game. And what I'm doing today, at first, my topic is Rise of the eSports. But I thought it was kind of mundane. I'm going to do something a little bit more controversial. I'm going to talk about future of sport, and the E is silent. So let me go through this and then try to convince you that there's enough and momentum here that essentially what you're building is a digital stadium of tomorrow. So let me see, figure out the clicker. OK, good. So first of all, when I start looking at sport, what is it? You know, back in the days, cavemen, you know, sport was really invented to select a perfect human being. You know, a perfect balance between the mind and the body. And for me, the old form of that video game is not really good because it involved pretty much a lot of blood. And then if you lose, you die. So it's not really the best game in selecting the best human being because it's really fighting for survival. And then what will happen is that if you look at the modern sport, there's really a long history of that. So if you look at, you know, you have to warp back in the 1920s. It's almost like 100 years ago, you know, when these sports are being played. So, you know, when you're looking at eSports, when people are playing video games for a competition, it is really like back in 1920s. People are playing out in the park. You know, NFL was founded in 1920. The monstrosity it is today, it took 90 years to get to this size. NBA was formed in 1946. Before that, people were playing these games in the barns. And NASCAR was formed in 1948. And that's what sport I feel like, gosh, you know, it's not really athlete. It's actually technology against technology. So technology plus human is really that sport. And that's actually the closest to what eSport is today. And then if you look at ESPN, which is a huge media network talking about sport, you know, it was formed basically on satellite, on a shoestring budget, talking about sport. When people saw it, they thought it was a crazy idea, and these guys won't survive. So when you look at today, a lot of people ask the same question. They say, gosh, really? People playing video games for a living? You know, most of the kids are home. They're playing video games. There's no future to it. So the parents, when they look at the kids playing video games, say, go do your homework. Instead of encouraging them, say, gosh, go ahead and play more so that you can be #1 in Call of Duty. So right now, there's actually a perfect storm, and a lot of the transition behind the scene that makes this whole thing really viable. So first of all, broadband, the internet, is accessible to anybody. Also, there's a cutting the cord phenomenon. So the kids today rather watch content on the internet. So what they're doing is they search for the content, they watch it. So what you do is that you're getting to more a pay for what you watch versus the old cable subscriber where you pay a flat fee every month. And that basically shift is actually happening, it's accelerating. Decline of the TV revenue. So people are skipping commercials. Started with the TiVo. It's awesome. I own one, and it's a killer app. And the live content is becoming king because it's getting harder and harder to monetize non-live content. Then there's also the rise of smartphone. That means that you can consume the content anywhere. So instead of sitting in front of the TV, you have the convenience of watching it on the go. So again, going back to live as king. It's not before like you have to get back home to sit in front of the TV to watch a show. Connected culture, so everybody needs to be entertained all the time. You're on Twitter, you're on your phone, you're tweeting, you're instant messaging with your friend. So really, like content, again, there's actually enough demand for content to go 24/7, and that freshness is key again. And then also TV production is expensive. So most people don't know, I actually found this out, like the cheapest video TV production is about $250K per hour of content created. So with the technology today, one of the questions I ask is that, gosh, if this whole thing is driven by technology, could it be much cheaper? So digital content is really the future. So if I look at, my story is that I saw this back 2 years ago. So at IGN Entertainment, we're an internet media business. We also thrive in innovation. So what I did was I ran engineering when I started IGN about 4 years ago. And what I did is I saw this trend coming, so I formed a group of volunteers to start an experiment and say, hey, if I start running this video game competition, can I grow a business out of it? So it's successful enough for me to keep that job. Now I'm doing that full time with a full group of people, with a full P&L. But when I started back in April, in 2011. And every 6 months, I'm actually seeing the effect of the traffic being doubled, which is actually showing that there's a growth, not only because there's IGN's reach, there's also more people watching that content. And if I actually do like funny math, and this is actually something that we'll actually put an asterisk on, a number of people who tune in, it's a little bit not fair because the esports event is more like cricket than an NBA game. So it's like 4 days versus two hours. But if you look at the total number of people who tune in, it's actually massive. You know, at IPL4, which actually occurred in April last year, we had 3 million uniques visited during that four-day event. And IPL5 was November last year, we had 6.9 million uniques, which was massive. So then I let you look outside. There's actually one game, if you haven't heard of it yet, League of Legends actually went in big time. Riot really believes in esport and invested in a huge way. So they did a Season 2 championship at the end of last year. They rented out an arena, the Nokia Center in LA, built it out like an arena, had a $2 million prize pool. So for one game, played during that 2-hour or so session, it had 1.1 million concurrent viewers watching that. So it shows that even with one game, with enough prize incentive, you actually can deliver results of the real sport. And more than 8.2 million total views. So if I look at my own event at IPL5, it's actually not too shabby. So I ran it across 4 days. We did 20.4 million hours of content watched, 6 million uniques, more than 60 million video views. And it actually, at that time in November, actually still the record holds. It's keep on getting broken from event to event. It just shows the growth. It's still the largest esports event in North America. So then I started looking at from an event-to-event statistic. So, what are the 4 characteristics that are most important for me? One is unique visitor. We already touched up on it. It doubled from event to event. Hours of content consumed almost went up like over 3x. Total views went up 2x. Concurrent viewers went up a little bit less because I guess it's spread out across 4 days, so you don't have the condensed version. But actually, it's okay because I look at it as that at any time, if there's about 500,000 people tuning in, it's actually fairly engaging content. And then year over year, it's actually not fair. We actually grew about 10x. So, but then, of course, the first year, we're mostly volunteers to really a set of full-time people working on this. So then, let me talk about esports in a different way. So let me talk about a phenomenon that everybody knows about. It's actually poker, right? So if we actually try to create poker into a formula and put video games in, why is poker so successful? And I call it the 5 pillars. One is you can watch it. So everybody tunes into ESPN. When you turn around, you either can watch the lumberjack competition or poker, you actually stay on poker. It's a bit more fun to watch than cutting down trees. Then you actually play the game, because a lot of you here probably joined a poker tournament. It actually has an element of randomness associated with it. So even if you're not that good, you feel like if you get lucky, you can win. So that allows people, it becomes really accessible for all of the players to join and actually participate, because they feel like if they're on a hot streak, they can actually take it all and actually win that pile of cash. The third thing is that because there's a success of this, a Chris Moneymaker moment, where a person who only played poker online went in there and proved that somebody who does not play this professionally can win that pile of cash. There's a whole industry actually created from learning poker, where some people coach you on when to fold, your tells, et cetera, and training you on doing that. There's also the aspect of gambling. This is where, if you look at traditional sports, the NFL is popular because of the fantasy football, the office pools. That makes you want to watch more games because you want to make sure your running back from the Cleveland Browns, who nobody cares about, is getting 100 yards per game. So that's the reason why it creates a killer application, because people compete. There's a game outside the game. And the last one is a celebrity status. When you win, you go up there, you basically instantly are on social media. You're in front of TV. You become an overnight celebrity, and people really want to be you. So that's a reason why the traditional quote-unquote sport, you can almost categorize it as this 5 pillar of a sport. So now if we actually flip back to video games, say, okay, let's switch poker back to video games. What is this? So what have we done to evolve video games? So one of the things is that if you look at Pong in 1972 to now Far Cry 3 in 2012, video games became more immersive. There's a story, you're in it, you're engaged, it's more realistic. You believe that you're a part of the game. So then, if you look at a sport today, why is, what would I love the sport to be? So I would love to be in the Matrix, just like Neo, stopping a bullet. So the game is where I jack in, and you can compete on a physical and mental level at the same time. But this time, the technology, the best technology like me, sitting in a video in my room and actually use a controller to do this. So if I make an analogy so that if there's an alien from outside space coming in and actually look at what is a sport playing today, they will say, gosh, the best technology for these human race is that people chasing around a ball, being kicked around, or people are actually playing with football where people hit each other trying to get access to the ball. And those are the most popular form of sport today. And you ask yourself, gosh, is there a better technology to do sport and basically find the perfect human being than actually what is there today? And I say, yes, there is. So let's actually talk about some of the sample opportunities, right? So we talked about a couple of things. One is that it has to be accessible. It has to be achievable. People have to believe that you can win. And like poker, there's a chance of randomness associated with it. So even if you're not any good, you can actually win a couple hand or two. You also can, one of the ideal scenario is that you can watch the content inside the game. I think some developers are doing that, like League of Legends. One of the reasons why the views spiked up is that you can watch within the game client itself. And Dota 2 from Valve is actually doing the same. So this is a phenomenon where everyday player who play a game gets stuck. You can watch content as some pros play. In addition, you can see what strategy are being used by pros to compete in a multiplayer game so you can get better. You can, these features already exist, but then in a more integrated way, I believe it will be more popular. You can compete your friends against your friends for ranking. Graduate to play for compete for money. So this is where, very similar to a poker model, you do a buy-in and basically do a graduated pool on payout. In the game itself, it allows you to do a play analysis. It tells you what you're doing good, and it also tells you what you're not doing so well. Like Mario Kart, there's a shadow there, tells you what the best player should be at any moment. That just shows you, if you want to be a pro, how good could you be, and then it could be integrated inside the game. You also could bet on your competition between your favorite player, just like traditional sport. That's what makes NFL viral today. That's what makes March Madness so nice is because the Sweet 16, the office pool, each college counts, the upset, the dark horses. And then you also can follow your top ranked player and then build it into the game allows more people to follow and make them into celebrities. And then last one is make it into a fantasy sport. So at the end of the day, I'm going to leave a food for thought for you. So again, going back to this, if you start thinking about sports today, aren't football, basketball, baseball primitive solution to man-to-man competition? So if we actually look at how our sport evolved from the primitive sports where people die when they lose, to now it's more civil, but people chase around a ball. Is there actually a better way to do this? And I'm actually honored to be in a room full of brightest minds in video game industry. And I would ask you to actually work on the digital stadium of the future because I feel like there's much better solutions than that. So anyways, thank you everyone.